Welcome into Tide and Tigers. Scott Griffin and Rodney Orr here. Alabama looking like the number one team in America, which they are. But a lot of people were saying Clemson was playing better. I, for one, thought Clemson was playing better so far this year. But today, Rodney, Alabama put any of that kind of talk to bed.
Yeah, really stunning performance, if you ask me. I mean, Vanderbilt came in undefeated, obviously. Had done really well defensively, led the nation in three different categories, only giving up 4.3 points a game, only giving up 95 yards a game passing. Total defense, the only team in the country to give up less than 200 yards a game at 198. And Scott, Alabama hangs 677 total yards on Vanderbilt, including 496 on the ground. 6 rushing touchdowns. By the way, that 496 yards rushing, the most in the Saban era. 38 first downs. Pretty stunning numbers.
No doubt about it. We'll get more into it here. Scott Griffin, Tide and Tiger, Rodney Orr of Tider Insider, brought to you by InnovateAthlete.com. Innovate, I-N-N-O-V, the number 8, athlete.com, tested by the World Doping Association, the best pre-workout, post-workout, protein, any supplement you want. It's absolutely dynamite. InnovateAthlete.com. Put in the code GRIFF and you'll get 10% off. Let's start with the first downs because, Rodney, that's a school record. The previous record, 36 against Western Carolina, November 22nd, 2014. So 38 was just an unbelievable number, but it's hard to look on this post-game book and see anything that's not impressive.
Really, the numbers were, it was just a dominant performance. And again, you know, Scott, I think it all started, the build up this week. They had some of their best practices of the season already, and including fall camp. You know, that was the word out of the complex in Tuscaloosa, was that the last few days, Wednesday, Thursday practices were really, really good. They felt like they were some of the best that they've had, if not the best. And then, you know, word is Coach Saban had a pretty rousing speech last night or yesterday afternoon, evening, asking the team, who are you? You know, and emphasizing the need for this team to really kind of identify themselves, take the next step, and how opponents continuously evaluate themselves by how they play against Alabama. And some of these teams here recently, Fresno State, Colorado State especially, had stayed close with Alabama. And so who are you? And ready to kind of create that identity of being a real physical team. And I think that's what we saw. We saw the offensive line, in my opinion, Scott, play their most physical game, maybe their most cohesive game, and I don't know when. I mean, it was really impressive the way they blocked, not only in the running game, we talked about 496 yards rushing, but I thought they protected the quarterbacks extremely well. So Nick Saban got his point across, I think, very, very well.
And Brent Key was very vocal this week at practice. You and I saw it on that line, trying to get them more physical, because Nick Saban mentioned that earlier in the week. We've got to be more physical on the offensive line. Let's hear from Nick Saban, his general thoughts so far. Alabama 4-0, 59-0 over Vanderbilt.
For 3 games, I've been saying we win, but there's a difference between winning and defeating your opponent in terms of how you dominate, what you do for 60 minutes in a game, and how you compete with consistency for 60 minutes in a game. And until we learn how to do that, which I think we did today, I don't think you'll ever get the respect you deserve. So I think they earned a lot of respect today.
Now, Bradley Bozeman has not played typical Bradley Bozeman football. Today, though, I think he helped anchor that line. Everybody was good, though, on that line.
Yeah, they really were. The interior was really strong. Lester Cotton at right guard, Ross Pierce-Baker at left guard, and Bradley Bozeman just dominated the nose man. Had his best game of the season, kind of what we've become to expect out of him. And, that's where it all starts, Scott. I mean, if your offensive line can get movement and perform, like they performed today, you're going to be really difficult to beat this Alabama team with all these running backs and the way they run and the big physical backs and their ability with the receivers, the tight ends to throw the ball, spread it around. And then, Jalen Hurts obviously had a pretty nice game, again, running it a little bit, throwing it a little bit. Didn't have to do nearly as much in this game, but I think with the performance of the offensive line, that's the key. If they can continue to perform like that, Alabama's going to be very, very difficult to stop.
The numbers are staggering. Alabama, as Rodney said, 677 yards, Vandy's 78 yards. 78 yards, 3 first downs compared to 38. So Alabama had 599 more yards than Vanderbilt. You know, I was at that Virginia Tech game. I don't think they were as dominant as this I saw today. This may be the most dominating game I've ever seen a Nick Saban team have.
Well, offensively, it would be certainly hard to question that, Scott. I mean, you know, a few years ago, obviously they beat Texas A&M in 2014, 59-0 in Tuscaloosa. That was quite a drubbing. You know, there have been some other very impressive performances. Michigan State and the what would have been the 2011 the Outback Bowl when they beat Michigan State 49-7, I think it was. You know, those were some pretty stunning performances as well. But this one, you know, offensively, I mean, they were hitting on all cylinders. The way they ran the ball, Damian Harris had a great day, Scott. 12 carries for 151 yards, 3 touchdowns. You know, Bo Scarborough had a nice game with 11 carries for 79 yards, a couple of scores. So Brian Robbins, true freshman out of Tuscaloosa Hillcrest, got his first career touchdown. And also I thought Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs looked really good. So, you know, again, just an overall outstanding performance offensively, running the ball. I know we're going to talk about Tua Tagovailoa coming in off the bench, but you know, spreading the ball around, doing some really nice things in the passing game.
Now, I remember that game because there were 4 guys that had 100 yards, which is obviously crazy impressive, right? But you know what? 6 guys had 48 or more yards today. You could argue that's even more impressive. Not only does that tell you about the talent of running back, but not only first team, but second team offensive line really doing work. Everybody was on the same page.
Some of the third guys. We saw 2 true freshmen playing, not only on the offensive line, and Jedrick Wills and also Alex Leatherwood both played considerably in the second half. But we saw 2 true freshmen come in the game at tight end with Kedrick James and Major Tennyson, both those guys out of the state of Texas, true freshmen. Major Tennyson got his first career reception on a really nice throw from Tua Tagovailoa. And on one of the late touchdowns, a run by Brian Robinson, Kedrick James had a fantastic block that sprung him there down near the goal line. So, man, these freshmen are just phenomenal.
Oh, it's unbelievable. We'll get more into that in a moment. And you know what's unbelievable is we're not even really talking about the defense. They completely shut down Vanderbilt, knocked Kyle Shermer around. Ralph Webb could get nothing done in this football game. He had 6 carries, 20 yards. This guy's got over 3,400 career yards.
Yeah, it was, like you said, it was pretty dominant defensively. I think that maybe we're talking so much about the offense and you get caught up in that because we've seen the defense perform, you know, great in the past. Obviously, I'm talking about past seasons. Of course, they did have a really outstanding performance earlier in the year in the first game in the opener against Florida State. But, Scott, this was really, like you said, 78 total yards. They had 40 yards on the ground, 38 yards passing, 3 first downs. I thought the defensive line played much faster today. I thought Anthony Jennings, his return was big. He forced a fumble, if you remember early, to set up a touchdown. Rashaan Evans was all over the field. I just thought that the defensive line as a whole played much, much better today.
15 true freshmen played in this game, and 15 true freshmen played for the year so far. They may have played in this game too, probably did, but 15 have played in 4 games so far. We're going to get into that more as we go here on the Tide Tiger broadcast with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider, myself, Scott Griffin with Tider Insider. Let's hear more from Nick Saban now on how those young players performed and what caught his eye.
Those guys were challenged the same way everybody else on the team was challenged because we've been putting those guys in the game. They haven't been playing very well. And I think they played a lot better today. And that's good because we'll need their depth and we'll need the experience that they gained, you know, down the road in the future.
Before we get into the freshman, Rodney, I do want to have a word on Jalen Hurts, who had a normal day, you know, running the football and throwing the football. Didn't have to do a lot. And that's my point, Rodney. This offense looked terrific. Brian Dable was calling a good game, making Vanderbilt defend everywhere on the field. And they didn't have to have Jalen be Superman.
You know, you and I have talked about this repeatedly, and that is it had turned into a Jalen having to carry quite a bit of the load as a runner. in some of these games here recently. Obviously, Fresno State, he had a really good game, 150-plus rushing, and then over 100 again last week against Colorado State. And you have all these weapons. You have all these running backs. You have all these receivers. The quarterback, we were hoping to see where he would become more of a distributor. And I think we saw some of that, obviously. He had to throw to Irv Smith early in the game, and he ran it much less in this game. The backs got more involved. And I think that's what we have to see as we continue to move along. Obviously, he's a weapon with his feet and is coming around as a passer even more and more. But at the same time, you've got all those weapons, Scott. They're your playmakers. You want, as a quarterback, as an offensive coordinator, Brian Dable, that's what his offense is about, diversity, the versatility of it. Getting out all these different guys involved makes it much, much more difficult for a defense to defend when you've got a quarterback distributing the ball to different guys, and it's not so much a, kind of a one-man band, so to speak. So I really think that was key. But let me say this, too. We go back to the offensive line. For all that to happen, the offensive line has to control the line of scrimmage. They have to be better than what they have been in the, at the first 3 games of the year. And again, I can't say enough about how much improvement we saw in that area.
Alabama riding a 30-quarter turnover-free streak dating back to the second quarter of the Auburn game last year. It's the longest in school history. The records only go back to 1940, but 30 quarters is the longest in school history. Jalen Hurts now, 150 attempted passes without an interception. That going back to the Auburn game last year, that's the 5th longest streak in school history. So you can live with some maturation of the offensive line stuff, Rodney, when you got that kind of stat coming out.
Absolutely. The first thing you want to do is protect the football. Don't beat yourselves. And that's one thing that, late in the season, Alabama got better at that last year. Jalen Hurts did a much better job protecting the football on his end. They've done a tremendous job of that so far this season. It's kind of amazing when you look at it, the statistic that you just stated, Scott, the fact that they've protected the ball as well as they have. And, when you can protect the football like that and you can run the football like Alabama can, and play that kind of defense. I mean, wow, if they can keep that recipe going, that's certainly going to be something that I think will give them an opportunity to return to the playoffs. I mean, that's a recipe for success for sure.
You know what you're going to hear, exactly what I would hear, that, okay, it was Vanderbilt, Alabama's the number 1 team, so what we expected. Let me do that again. You know what we're going to hear, exactly what you probably have already heard, that Alabama beat a Vanderbilt team. It's Vanderbilt, so don't worry about it. But I would point out that Alabama just played that good. I still think Vandy's a pretty good football team and certainly improved. I think they're going to win 6 or 7 games this year.
Yeah, I think so too, Scott. I mean, I think Derek Mason's done an outstanding job. Look, and again, I realize the competition maybe wasn't quite the best. Kansas State's not a bad team, but they beat Alabama, A&M, and Middle Tennessee to open the season. Obviously those 2 teams aren't high quality in terms of, what you face in the SEC. But, for Vanderbilt defensively to be where they've been, only giving up 4.3 points a game and the other numbers that I provided a while ago, I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. This is not a bad defense. This is basically a team that went to Athens, Georgia last year and beat Georgia. And so this team defensively is really good. I think Kyle Shermer is an outstanding quarterback. He was passing for 234 yards a game coming in. So this is not a bad Vanderbilt team. But the funny thing is, people that might say, well, it was Vanderbilt, these are the same people, if you look at some of the national people, Dan Wolken being one of them, couldn't understand why Alabama was favored by 19 points. He didn't think Alabama would even score 19 points on this Vanderbilt defense. So to turn around now and say all of a sudden that, well, it is Vanderbilt, I mean, well, they were 3-0. They had all those numbers. This was the team that everyone predicted would give Alabama a hard time. Listen, I thought they would provide a really strong challenge for Alabama on the road.
I did too.
But I was wrong.
Yeah,
I was wrong.
No doubt. I mean, I expected, I thought it'd be 2 or 3 touchdowns, but this would be a hard-fought game. But Alabama just played lights out. All right, let's get to those freshmen that we just heard from and talked about a minute ago. Joining all the other 12 today was Brian Robinson, Kedrick James as Rodney talked about, and then, of course, Major Tennyson, who also had his first catch. We got to start with Tua Tagovailoa, though. We've seen him a couple of games. He looked pretty sharp in a brief stage performance in his first game against Fresno State. Not as sharp Colorado State, but today you saw what Rodney and I have been talking about, how the ball explodes out of his hand. The ball comes out quick. The decision-making is quick. He looks like a senior out there.
I mean, very impressive, Scott. His first throw was a rope. I mean, when his back foot hits the ground, that arm is moving forward, ready to throw it. I mean, it's timing with him, and you can tell he's very comfortable doing it. I mean, maybe his best throw of the game was an incomplete pass, the one he dropped right over a defender, right into Calvin Ridley's hands. I don't even think Ridley expected it, to be honest with you. That's probably why he dropped it. It was a nice throw, incredible throw. Obviously, there were some other ones, the pirouette where he avoided two defenders in the backfield, and Scott was under extreme pressure and delivered an unbelievable pass in the back of the end zone to Devontae Smith for the touchdown. As you noted to me earlier, he got hammered on that play right after he delivered it. Now, that was a big-time throw. The throw to Major Tennyson was a big-time throw. That was, as we noted, Major Tennyson's first reception of his Alabama career. So, I mean, this kid, he's in charge. He's extremely talented, extremely gifted as a passer. Comes so natural to him. He's a guy that can spread it around to all these weapons that Alabama has. When you look at him, I mean, all you can really say, Scott, is wow.
There's no doubt about it. And his eyes, the little nuanced things, his eyes being downfield to see Devontae Smith as he was getting nailed and under pressure. Those things, because most of the time when pressure comes, quarterback's eyes drop. It's relevant to pressure coming in. And he was downfield. He threw a nice rope to Jerry Jeudy, who got a touchdown. But the one to Major Tennyson, just a little 10-yard out, that was an NFL throw because you don't throw that. He wasn't open. He had about a 1.5 foot window, and Tua didn't hesitate and threw it like he was wide open. It was unbelievable.
Well, part of that is, Scott, he has the ability to see. When he looked at Tennyson, he saw the defender was on him but had his back turned to him. That's something that a quarterback has to recognize, because if the defender has his back to him, you know, you've got an opportunity to complete that pass. Tennyson had not even a half a step on him, but he put it right where Tennyson could catch it and where the defender would have a hard time finding it if he turned his head around. That is a quarterback. That's a guy that's really well schooled in the passing game.
All right, let's talk about some other guys. It was easy to see Brian Robinson look terrific. I mean, he doesn't look much different to me than Najee Harris. Najee Harris has already impressed us this year, so what he did today was kind of expected. So let's stay on the offensive side of the ball. I know your eyes probably went to the offensive line, too, with Wills, and I saw Leatherwood in there right tackle as the game wore on.
Wills did a nice job. I think when he was in there, again, there were so many young players that played. We saw so many of them. Brandon Kennedy at center, Josh Cashier got in the game at right guard. Deontay Brown got in the game at right guard. You mentioned Alex Leatherwood at left tackle. So many young players on the offensive line got in there. And really, when you watched them, maybe Vanderbilt kind of quit or gave up at that point because they were so tired. But by the time they got in there, Scott, these second, third group guys, man, they performed like the first group. I mean, they pretty much controlled the line of scrimmage. Even allowing Ronnie Clark, as you saw, the sixth tailback to play for Alabama in the game, he had some nice runs. So, again, you saw some of these young guys getting a lot of experience. I think that certainly will be helpful.
I thought Brandon Kennedy, who's been a guard most of his career, playing center now, looked terrific too. Not only blocking, but the ball was delivered to Tagovailoa pretty cleanly every time.
It was. And J.C. Hassenauer, a former backup center, now looked like he was at left guard some in the game. So, he got some reps. I did not see if Chris Owens made it in, number 79, the redshirt freshman out of Texas, but he's a guy that I know has a bright future as an interior player, probably as a center. He's been working at center, but all these guys, Scott, again, it was really impressive with how well they performed, as a group of young offensive linemen that did not have much experience.
No doubt about it. We saw Devontae Smith's touchdown. We saw Henry Ruggs show his speed when the whistle blew and he actually was tackled on the punt return, but we got to see a little bit of his explosion as well. Defensively, we didn't see as many guys. Saw Xavier McKinney a little bit. I did notice Dylan Moses. I don't know if you did from this game.
I think I saw him on special teams. Did not see him defensively. Again, I have to go back and watch the tape or whatever, and check it. But I'm pretty sure I saw number 8 on special teams. I'll say this too. I did see a young player. Of course, he's a sophomore that showed up a lot. Was Mac Wilson. I thought he got a lot of pressure on the quarterback as a pass rusher. He's a really physical player. I thought he came up pretty big in the game. I thought, he's a guy that can play multiple positions now as a linebacker, and I thought he did a nice job.
No doubt about it. And Alabama needs to improve their pass pressure, not from the blitzing standpoint. We know Jeremy Pruitt's going to do that 45 to 50% of the time, but they like to get pressure from the front four. It hasn't been there this year. But I thought today, Bugs and Payne and, moving hand to an end and obvious passing downs, they're starting to get a little bit more pressure as well.
Yeah, standing hand up, it looked like he felt pretty good rushing the passer and standing up, coming off the edge like that. Maybe gives him a better start or whatever. But, he got some pressure. You mentioned Bugs. You mentioned Deron Payne. Raekwon Davis was active at times as well. Did not see Quentin Williams. May have probably played later on. But, I think some of the defensive front, for the most part, played a lot faster in this game than they've played. And again, I thought you mentioned some of the blitzing. Obviously, they brought some guys from the secondary. Minka had a couple of really nice blitzes where he got in the quarterback's face. So I just think they really affected Shermer, who's done a nice job, for Vanderbilt. It's going to be really interesting watching this Alabama defense continue to develop.
Here's more from Nick Saban after the game.
Well, I thought this was our best week of practice defensively. And I think it showed in the way we played in the game. The way they like to play, the fact that we got ahead of them in the game probably affected how they like to play. They like to run the ball, keep it close to the vest, play good defense. But when we got ahead of them in the game, I think that was a real key. But I was really pleased with the way the defense played. I was really pleased with the way they practiced all week. I think we learned something today by the way we competed. It's really what you have to be able to do in this league to play with consistency. I mean, we'll play another good team next week and another good team the week after that. So we just got to take them one game at a time. And got a 24-hour rule around here. You can enjoy this win for 24 hours, and we got to look to what we need to do for the next week.
Again, you're listening to Tide and Tiger, the post-game analysis. Scott Griffin here, Tide and Tiger, Rodney Orr of Tider Insider. Of course, 677 yards. Vandy was 78. So pretty easy to do the math. 599 more yards. Again, a school record 38 first downs. Vandy with 3. Now, you know what Nick Saban's going to do, right? Enjoy it now. He's going to be harping on every mistake they made, which wasn't a lot, Rodney. But as soon as they get in tomorrow, Monday, he's going to be harping on mistakes to keep those guys level-headed.
He's already talking about the 24-hour rule. They've got a big game coming up, obviously, next week. It's a late game, 8 p.m. That can always be difficult. Those are tricky games when you're playing late at night, Scott. So you got Ole Miss coming to town. They're a team that offensively has a lot of really good talent. Shea Patterson's a great young quarterback. That Nick Saban will be certainly harping on what they can do offensively. They put up 43 against Alabama the past 2 years. So that's something that I think, will be a focus this week is, you don't want to let down defensively because Shea Patterson, as I mentioned, great young quarterback, very strong arm, great receivers. A.J. Brown, he's a Julio Jones type receiver.
All big receivers.
They've got some other guys.
Yeah, every one of them's over 6'1".
Physical receivers.
Yeah.
So this is a team that you have to be really cautious of. Now, defensively, they're a little bit thin. I don't think there's any question about that. But, again, they're a team that's a threat because of their offensive ability to strike quickly.
And let's be honest, they got nothing to lose. They can throw it 70 times if they want. They can run reverses. They can go for it at fourth down. They got 0 to lose. That's a dangerous team.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity, though, for Alabama's defense to really go up against a guy that I think he needs some more experience, Shea Patterson, but he's potentially a very high-quality quarterback. He's a guy that can move around. He's not just a stationary guy. He has great ability to scramble. He can throw on the run. He can make plays down the field. He keeps his eyes, as you've noted, Scott, about quarterbacks keeping their eyes down the field on receivers. He does a nice job of that. And I'm telling you, these receivers, they're big physical receivers you mentioned. A.J. Brown, Metcalf, several others that they have. So there'll be a real challenge to the Alabama defense.
Alabama offensively again tonight, just to give you the numbers, Damian Harris, 12 carries, 151 yards, career high in touchdowns with 3. He had never even had 2, Rodney, and he had 2 at the half. He looked terrific. Bo Scarborough, 11 for 79. Najee Harris, 10 for 70, including 2 Superman leaps. Brian Robinson, who Rodney talked about from Hillcrest, 5 for 51. Even Ronnie Clark, 10 for 48. Jalen Hurts, 9 for 48. Josh Jacobs got 4 carries. So the running game really stood out, but some unbelievable yards per carry averages there.
Really was. And again, I think Alabama needs to build on that, take this into the next week, because like I mentioned, I think Ole Miss defensively is a little thin. You run the ball on them. You keep Shea Patterson off the field. You wear them down because, again, they're a little bit thin defensively, and, you're in pretty good shape in this game. But I do think, obviously, this is a big stepping stone for Alabama. I think that, they have to use it, move forward with it, and hopefully, again, the defense continues to mature and develop and get some guys healthier. And, hey, this could be another run.
Jalen Hurts, 9 of 17 for 78 yards, but I thought the ball still came out pretty quick, but not as quick as number 13, Tua Tagovailoa, 8 out of 10, 103 yards throwing. Receiving, Calvin Ridley, 5 for 43. Jerry Jeudy, 3 for 68, including a touchdown. Irv Smith caught a couple of balls for 14 yards. Devontae Smith had the 1 catch with a 27-yard touchdown. Tennyson, Sims, Damian Harris, Najee Harris, Bo Scarborough, Robert Foster all had catches for Alabama. All right, final thoughts. This is just, I don't think we can glow enough about how well Alabama played, but it's all over tomorrow.
Yeah, again, you have to move on from this. And, this is a young team. Alabama has a lot of really young players. We talked about all the freshmen that played, but, all the new faces defensively. Lost 7 starters last year. So what's the point? The point is, this is something, this is going to be a learning experience for those guys, coming off a big win. You haven't arrived. There's still a long season to play. You've got to play consistently. And I think that's the thing that Nick Saban certainly will try to get across this week to them.
Great stuff. Scott Griffin, Tide and Tiger. Remember, you go to podbean.com, subscribe to Tide and Tigers, where you hear Rodney and I's thoughts. You can also see us with practice video and also practice reports at Tide and Tiger on YouTube. For those of you who are not listening to TiderInsider.com right now, Rodney, tell people a little bit about your site.
Well, TiderInsider.com, it's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, there's an address there to send a check. Gives you access to all our premium information, as well as our forum, Scott, where that thing has been rocking today with, people sharing thoughts and opinions and also information there. And, it will continue on through the week. We'll move right into Sunday morning and where there's a lot of discussions, and then Monday, Coach Saban's press conference in another week.
Christian Miller tweeting out after the game, they wanted us, and that's exactly what they got. Hashtag be careful what you wish for. I think that kind of sums it up, because Alabama certainly played like that today.
Wise words from Christian.
All right, for Rodney Orr, Scott Griffin saying so long again. We'll talk to you Monday. Rodney and I with the practice reports, and also Nick Saban and much more. Thanks for listening to Tide and Tiger with Scott Griffin, Tider Insider with Rodney Orr. So long, everybody.